Hi, this is Marylee again with the Earth Mother Story of the Week. This is our second attempt and we're still learning, so bear with us. My story this week is kind of a special story. It's one of my favorites. I guess all my stories are kind of my favorites. But when you come into our store, and one of these days I will do like a little movie of the whole store so you can see what's inside here. But we're so much more than just a health food store, and this represents why we're more than a health food store. When you first walk into our store, you're met by this prayer box and this picture of Jesus, and this is my dear friend, painted by my dear friend Kathy Smith of Monroe City, Missouri, and she's a devout Christian and touches the life of everybody that's ever met her, I guess. And she painted this picture of Jesus, and this was her vision of what Jesus looked like. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, I think that's what he looked like too, you know. You see a lot of pictures, and that's not quite what you think he looks like. Maybe he can look like whatever each one of us wants him to look like. But on the front of the little prayer box, this is what's written. It has, day and night someone is praying. You can request prayers for yourself or another at any time. And I had the neatest thing happen a couple days ago. There was a little girl, about 8 or 10, and her daddy was waiting on her, and she was writing a prayer request, putting it in a prayer box. And I told her, I said, you are making my heart sing. And the daddy looked at me and said, I'm so proud of her. So we're far more than just a place to buy vitamins. We have 2 ministers that work here, Pentecostal ministers sitting right here by me, and I have an interdenominational minister. We're all denominations. I'm Catholic. I have another Catholic working here. We have a couple Baptists. We're just ecumenical movement at Earth Mother, just trying to help people with God's medicine. Now, this is a story, okay? Pennies to Heaven. I wrote this in 2014. I sat there anxiously waiting for this huge man-made bird to land in Rome, Italy. I'm clutching my little brown leather bag. It contains seven special pennies. They were given to me by the pastor of the Fresh Anointing Pentecostal Church, Brother Stafford. He and a group from his flock prayed over these pennies. They asked that the next owner of the pennies receive a blessing from God. I became acquainted with this church through one of my employees of many years, Sonia Lewis. She sits right here by me. She's also my tech on this phone, okay? I have attended several special events at her church. I really, being brought up the way I was, I sometimes wonder if they invite me for me to watch them, you know? Their way of worship is a lot different than the church I was brought up in, or the Catholic church that I belonged to for now 40 years. The Catholic Church, though, for me, was the first place I found the Holy Spirit. We have a lot of Pentecostal customers at the store. My late husband used to say, I never met one of them Pentecostals I didn't like. I am in total agreement with that compliment. We have all forms of worship. Some folks who worship quietly jump up and down at a football game, while others are more active in church and watch the games quietly. You see what I mean? I don't think it matters as long as we know the Lord and follow His Son, Jesus. It is different roads that are all going to lead to the same place. Back to the plane. I checked now. Yeah, that little brown bag's still there and the pennies are still in it. I must have thought they were going to run away or something. My little scrap of paper from Brother Stafford's still in there too. I'm a little nervous about these pennies. My instructions are to drop a penny in a place when I have my first God moment of each day. Now, Pastor Stafford says, I'll know when to drop them. So I pray I get God's little nudge there. The person in the seat next to me is the shepherd of our flock. I am with a group of 37 pilgrims from St. Joseph Catholic Church here in Farmington, Missouri. I shared the penny story with Father Ricky during our 9-hour flight across the ocean. Can you imagine that priest being stuck with me 9 hours all the way across the ocean? I told him I didn't know what he'd done bad, but it must have been something to be stuck with me that long. He just laughed. But he was fascinated with this thing on the pennies. and how God would tell me when I should drop a penny. He was really into it. We had one glimpse of Rome as the plane taxied to the airport. We saw a large grove of old olive trees. Didn't look anything like Missouri, I can tell you that. The tour guide from Peter's Way Tours was waiting for us at the airport. The tour bus drove us through the Michelangelo Hotel. That's where we stayed. The motor coach then drove us through ancient Rome, the Eternal City, that first afternoon. The history was made visible to us through 2,500 years of the Roman ruins, 15th century churches, and 17th century palaces, and 20th century monuments. All of this was almost more than one could imagine. Our first evening, Father Ricky invited my friend Agnes and I to walk down to St. Peter's Square to gather some information we needed for our next day. I'm telling you folks, I had such a God moment when I walked through those big columns at St. Peter's Square. I just stopped and tried to take it all in. Wow, I was really there. I am a big fan of EWTN, the Catholic Network. It was such a support for both my husband and I during his long lingering illness. We would see Rome every single day on EWTN. Now to see it in person, it was a real thing. It wasn't a TV backdrop anymore. I really thought this might be the first penny drop, but for some reason, I felt that I should wait. And I was hoping God would be a good nudger, and I think he was. I was patient enough to listen to him. I kind of have a problem with patience, as some folks know, but Father Ricky and Agnes are now attempting to read an Italian sign to obtain that information we needed for the next day. Me, I'm just wandering around there trying to take it all in. A stranger, very clean, approaches me and starts to speak to me in a foreign language. Father Ricky and Agnes hear him, and they quickly turn around to try to see what's going on. The stranger is dressed a little different. He says to Father Ricky said to ask him if he wanted something. He said, "Do you speak of the English?" Father told him yes. This man had the most piercing eyes that I have ever seen. He turned around from Father Ricky, back to me, looked directly at me. He reaches in his pocket and pulls out an Italian penny. He holds it between his index finger and thumb. Looking me straight in the eye, he says, "All I'm asking you for, ma'am, is 1 penny. I stand there in shock for a few seconds. Then I reach in my back, and Father Ricky's telling me, "Marylee, give him a penny. Get your penny. Give him a penny," like I was not going to do it. Then I reach in my back pocket and give him a penny for that day. Father Ricky, with a great look of amazement and a great big sigh, turns and says, "Well, obviously this was supposed to be witnessed by a Catholic priest." Agnes is left speechless. She just stands there looking at what's going on, but also witnessed this special event. If it wasn't real, sure gave all three of us goosebumps, let me tell you. The stranger disappeared into the crowd. I never saw him again, and I was there every day that week. I do believe the three of us witnessed not only an invisible, but also a visible connection. One that ran all the way across the ocean from a Pentecostal church in Fredericktown, Missouri, to the Vatican in Rome, Italy. We had a private mass at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls at 9 a.m. on Monday. Father Ricky shared the penny story with everyone at Mass that morning. The 37 pilgrims in our group all became fascinated with those Pentecostal pennies too. They were eager to see who was to get the next penny. Sunday's penny was given to a beggar. I felt this was really just this decrepit old lady's way of life, but I don't know. I felt God tell me that, we're all God's children, and I knew she could use a blessing too. Monday's Penny went to one of our group I befriended. I first met Marcella when we were getting our get-together meetings on planning this trip to Rome. I could tell right off, like myself, she had a type A personality. In other words, if there's a dispute in the group, y'all better hope Marcella and I are on the same page. You know what I mean? Marcella approached me after breakfast that morning. She laid her cane to one side, bent over and kissed my forehead, and told me I was truly a beautiful person. I was so moved by her act of kindness. I felt God nudge. This is a God moment, Marylee. Give Marcella a penny. I approached her in the lobby and told her that I had obviously touched her heart and she had touched mine. I think God tried to put us on the same page to always be friends. Tuesday's penny was left on a kneeling rail in the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi on our visit there. It was a 2-hour ride from Rome. We celebrated a private mass at the Basilica with Father Ricky. A vagabond-type person shared that first pew with Agnes and I. There was also a group that joined us from Pennsylvania. That was pretty cool. The vagabond, I don't think, could speak any English. He didn't need words to show his love, though. During the peacetime, he hugged Agnes and I, and you could tell he was just such a nice person. I tried to give a penny to him and so he could get the blessing, but he didn't understand. He shook his head no. I didn't know how to convey the message to him, so I left the penny on the rail for him or someone else to find. I can only hope maybe he went back and found the penny. Wednesday's penny went to a lady from Australia. Her name was Angelina, you know, like angel. She and her husband were standing in front of us during our audience with Pope Francis. I watched her body language. I could tell they were on a mission. It was not just a visit. I carefully approached her, giving her a brief version of the penny blessings. She took the penny, closed her eyes, and she gave me a big hug. She said, "Oh, thank you. We are here for our son. We need all the blessings we can get." So, folks, one of those pennies went to Australia. Thursday's penny, by unanimous decision, was one of our pilgrims again that went with our group. She had had several joint replacements. Rosella walked with a cane. This trip was a dream of a lifetime for her to go to Rome. She had the determination and grit of a true pilgrim. Rome is built on 7 hills and has thousands of steps. I complained every day about those steps. I never heard Rosella complain once about anything. She was such an inspiration to everyone on the tour, especially me. God gave me a good nudge. I give Rosella a penny. Friday's penny was a nudge each day of the week. Every night I would see from my window a homeless person. He would roll out his mat on the ground level of the garden apartments behind the hotel. He would leave real early in the morning. I watched this daily, always wondering what his story was and praying for him. We could open the window on this 5th floor because there were no screens. I could do this. We had an early wake-up call that last day. Well, the homeless man was still in his bedroll. I climbed up on this ledge. Yeah. But from the inside, I was still in the room. Now, with my very best throwing arm, I threw the penny as hard as I could in the direction of the homeless man and asked God to bless him and his survival. I told this penny story to a group that I was on another trip after I got back home, was going to California. I told that story to a group, and there was a young guy standing there, and he said, "You know what?" He said, "I've always wondered why they keep making pennies. I thought they ought to quit making. He said, you know, every time I see a penny from now on, ma'am, I'm going to think of this awesome story. I talked to Father Ricky that maybe we ought to give the Pentecostals some Catholic pennies. He thought that was a great idea. Well, I tried to get pennies, but couldn't make this poor Italian understand what I wanted, so I ended up with a roll of Italian 2-piece cents. They were 2-cent pieces. Father said a blessing over them, several of us in the car on our way home from the airport, and then later the entire group prayed over them too, all of our pilgrims that went over there. And I read the story to the 37 pilgrims that went to Rome at that reunion, and everyone there held those pennies and asked God to convey a special blessing with each coin. I kept one coin to always remind me of the ripple effect this simple act of kindness that has brought from the Pentecostals to the Catholics. A blessing of Christian unity, an ecumenical movement to all Christians. I am sure it puts a smile on God's face to know His children are walking together in His Son's holy name. Now, you're not going to believe a couple things I'm about to tell you. But a month after I was in Rome, Pope Francis visited a Pentecostal church in Italy in July. The following is a prayer he said on this visit. I pray to the Lord that He will unite us all. Let us move forward. We are brothers. Let us give each other that spiritual embrace and allow God to complete the work He has begun. Because this is a miracle, the miracle of unity has begun. Now we go on to one more thing that just happened at the radio station. When I read this story and I have a large listening audience, and when I read the story on the radio Friday morning, right after I finished my story, the DJ, was a technician, one of the technicians, reaches up and he pushes something on the computer. I'm not that good on the computer, but he pushes something, and it saves my story right there on the radio station. When he did that, the screen turned and had Hebrew words on it. The Hebrew language came up on the screen. I don't know how did it happen. I'll let you think about that for a minute. It had the whole radio station in a buzz, and it's had the people in this area in a buzz. But he reached back up to push it again, and it saved my story. I'll join you again next week. I look forward to it. We're not running right on time here with our days, but we do the best we can until we get this all figured out. God bless you all.